thyself is to love thyself, is to examine, observe, and respect thyself. It's an ongoing process, never to be explained in a brief synopsis. It's a preoccupation with reflection and revelation that can only be achieved through discipline and determination.
Hello, 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 and welcome to the Encouraging Word Show. For those of you who are not familiar with the show, let me tell you, you are in for a treat. The Encouraging Word Show is actually a show that I started about a year ago to help students and parents prepare for college and career planning. So the show is packed every episode with tips, resources, or strategies that you can use on a college or a career path. That's not even a word. Nevertheless, I want to tell you guys, I've got some great new things. I got new topics, got a new set design, and I got a glorious new co-host with me today. She is, well, not even today, but actually this whole semester, she's my intern, and she's going to be our co-host. So this is going to be a great opportunity. And I want Shay Hughes, the glorious co-host that I have with me today, to tell a little bit more about herself.
Hello everyone, my name is Shay Hughes and I am a very creative person. I love bringing out the best in others. I am currently a grad student at Columbia College. I'm majoring in leadership and change.
Awesome.
So be on the lookout. I'll be doing some great things coming up.
Yes, you will. I have no doubt about that whatsoever. True.
Yeah.
So Shay and I were talking before we began taping today. And one of the things we wanted to touch on, of course, with us both being young African-American women, and we were talking about, of course, the importance of Black History Month. And then another thing that we kind of discussed was the topic of, how people can put limitations on things. So people can put limitations on you based upon their impression of you, based upon who they think you are, as maybe opposed to who you actually are, that sort of thing. So we wanted to kind of tie those two things in together. And so today's topic or main area is going to be called, well, the title is No Limit. And when we looked at Black history figures, we thought, okay, wouldn't it be cool to look at somebody more contemporary? We know, of course, a lot of the wonderful and prominent African-American historical figures, but we thought, wouldn't it be cool to look at somebody relatively young and somebody making even some modern history. So we came up with two legislators. Tell the audience about the first one we looked up.
All right, so the first one that we looked up was Caleb Hanna, and he is from West Virginia, and he's in the House of Delegates, and he is representing the Republican Party.
Yes. And he's from
West Virginia, and he's 19 years old.
Right. And then what was even more astounding to us is not just the fact that he was 19 years old, but also the fact that he's a college freshman.
Yes.
So he's a freshman in the House of Delegates for West Virginia, and he's also a college freshman, which is really impressive. Mm-hmm. And then to top that, there's a gentleman who's even younger. He's also 19, so he's probably got Caleb beat by maybe a few months. Yeah. And he was the youngest legislator currently, and he is actually a Democratic member of the Wisconsin State Assembly. I'm sorry, I was drawing a blank there for a second. So his name is Kaylin Haywood, and Kaylin Haywood has some great things that I expect to see from him as well in the future. So take a look at those individuals when you get some time. There's Kaylin and there's Caleb. Kaylin Haywood and Caleb Hanna. Say that 5 times fast. Now, moving on, we want to give you a few strategies and tips. And the strategies and tips we wanted to highlight for today were to really give you 4 of the top tips we can give you for selecting a college major. So let's hit it with tip number 1.
Yeah, so tip number 1 is to know yourself. Know your passions, know your gifts, know what you're naturally good at, knowing, what's best for you and not what others say is best for you.
Mm-hmm. Very, very critical. Now, for tip number 2, we want to consider related majors. And essentially what I mean by that is when you consider, let's say, give me an example of a career path you considered at one point in time.
Graphic design.
Okay, so graphic design. So in graphic design, what do you typically do?
You could do maybe like editing for, marketing mostly.
Okay. So let's say you wanted to take that to a different level, or you wanted to explore opportunities. If you're great at graphics and visual arts and putting things together, maybe that would look differently if you were to go into, let's say, television and you were to do digital graphics. If you were interested in something like film, you might do something like special effects or visual effects and graphics, that sort of thing. You might work more so within the doing something internet related and doing graphics for maybe social media, that sort of thing. So what we essentially mean when we talk about related careers is look at those things that you're gifted at, as Shay said, but then also look at how that can encompass several other maybe mediums or platforms. And the reason that you want to do that is because oftentimes you'll stumble upon an even greater platform or career path that ends up being a dream job that you never would have considered otherwise if you just hadn't been open to that possibility. So give me a third tip for today.
Okay, so the third tip is consider the salary.
Okay.
And that has both sides to it. So
absolutely.
Don't go for the career that you make $150,000, but you're not willing to put the work in, and then,
or you're not passionate about it.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. And then on the other side, making sure you pick a career that you can actually maintain your lifestyle.
Right. And I think that's key too. You mentioned don't go for the salary of $150,000, and I'm not hating on anybody that's making that. And I would argue though that you can pursue the career path that makes 150 or 7 figures, whatever it may be. But going back to the first example or tip that you gave, make sure that it's something you enjoy. Making sure that it's something that you loved or that you're gifted at. Because what happens ultimately if you're just going for the dollar and there's no deeper value to it than that, or you're not serving maybe others, that sort of thing, then you can have the money that you want and maybe the lifestyle, but then if you're not truly happy and in terms of fulfillment and contentment, that goes a long way. Peace of mind is priceless.
Yes, it is.
And if you don't have the peace of mind, in spite of the fact that you're making the money, that can turn into health problems and all kind of other issues. I remember years ago learning that, I forget the percentage now, but I want to say it was something as high as like 75% of Americans actually hate their jobs.
Yes.
And I
can't believe it.
You can't?
I can't.
See, I couldn't because that was because I was working in something that I really loved, and I thought, well, wow, how miserable would I be if I hated my job? And I just couldn't imagine that. So again, the tip from that, learning what the average salary is for that particular field or industry that you're going into, if you know that ahead of time, that gives you the latitude to know and think about making changes or learning about some other opportunities where you can make waves. For example, case in point, we've touched on the field of education before. In education, we kind of know nationally and maybe for that matter worldwide, education isn't necessarily known as one of those industries where you can make a ton of money necessarily, but you actually can do pretty well in education. It's just dependent upon what your goal and your aim is. If your thought is to be president of a college or university, if you're a person who is interested in business ownership and you plan on owning maybe some daycare centers or something like that, or running some after school programs or summer programs, maybe that's an aspect that you hadn't thought of. Maybe if you were interested in owning something like some of the tutoring centers that are franchises across the nation. Those are some different aspects that are all still within the vein of education, but may get you closer to that salary that you're looking for an area that you may not have considered you'd be able to really make money in. Last topic or last tip we want to cover is thinking about putting in the work and how much time and effort it will take to be successful in your particular field. You want to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, so, if you want that Lamborghini or, the Maybach, making sure that you know the work to get to it.
Absolutely.
Making sure that you're prepared to put that work forth.
Absolutely. Now, one of the things that I, coming from the Chi and then being in North Carolina now, of course, somebody that I do admire, don't always agree with, but still admire, is still Michael Jordan. And one of the things I remember mentioning, or remember reading rather, with him or about him, was the level of time and commitment and the work he put in. He was oftentimes the first one to practice and then the last one to leave. And when you think about that particular commitment and that kind of work ethic and his level of competition at the level he played at, and this is pre-LeBron, Steph Curry, and those guys are, of course, amazing and incredible in their own right. But somebody paved the way for them, and it was Jordan, And before Jordan, there was the Bill Russells of the world, and Wilt Chamberlain, and some of those guys, Dr. J. But in order to be at that level, even to compete at that level, you got to put in some time. You got to put in some serious work. And whether it's athletics we're talking about, or whether we're talking about something like chemistry or becoming a nuclear physicist, whatever it may be, learn what it takes to be at the top of your game in that particular industry. How many hours are going to be required for you to be successful? And not just that, but even learning to position yourself. So if you're looking at going to med school, are you looking at the rankings for that particular school that you're going to go to? And how does positioning work in your mind in terms of helping you be a success?
You said positioning?
Yeah. How let's say, for example, how can positioning yourself help you to get closer to your goal?
Oh, okay. So, making sure that you keep your mind open of, all the possibilities that you have. My grandmother, she used to always tell me, if you go somewhere and you're not prepared, you may miss something.
Right. And so if you're not prepared to excel or be at the top of your game for whatever that field is that you want to go into, that can be a setback, and then it costs you time and money as well. Another thing is going back to talking about being at the top of your game and recognizing how competitive your school is, or how competitive that training program is for you to be at the top of your game. If you're going to a certain college or university, let's say you wanted to, maybe if you're looking at law schools and your ultimate goal is to be a Supreme Court justice. Now, what are some schools that are going to position you to be a Supreme Court justice? What are some schools where they maybe have connections with the Supreme Court? What are some schools that maybe some of the Supreme Court justices that you most admire graduated from? You want to consider those things. And when you look at the background of those different things, that can really help to position you. Now, we want to shift, because we, of course, talked about those 4 tips, and we'll review those before we wrap up for today. But one last thing for our topic for today was, of course, based on no limit. And I wanted to know if you have a personal example, either a celebrity or personal example, of somebody that you can think of that really kind of stood out in your head and really lives with maybe no limits.
Yeah. So one actress that I could think of is Angela Bassett.
Okay.
She actually is 60 years old, but she looks half that age.
Yes, she does.
Yes, she looks
she's
wonderful.
Fierce. Yes.
She's played in roles such as, the Rosa Parks story, the Jacksons, the Tina Turner story.
Yeah, loved her in that.
Some really good movies. But she's never won an Oscar.
Get out of here.
Yeah, she's never won an Oscar, but she hasn't let that define her being successful, because she still is doing the darn thing.
Yeah, she is. She and killing it at
Yeah,
that. Yeah. Black Panther, she looked great. That's probably the most recent thing that I can think of with her in it. But yeah, she's definitely killing it. Well, my example comes a little closer to home, and I would say in terms of no limits, my mom, I think, was a great example. She was going into or pursuing computer sciences at a time when nobody really even knew what the devil that was. It wasn't a given that everybody had a laptop or a desktop computer even at that particular time. Heck, nobody even knew what a computer was, much less a mouse or anything like that. And she started down that particular path, and then she took time off to have me. And once she actually returned to school, after I acquire my bachelor's degree. And my mama, who, you know, has always been persistent and great in academics, actually went and got her associate's
That's
degree.
great.
Yeah, it is. I'm very proud of her. And she actually looked at, you know, you mentioned graphics earlier. She actually went into graphics for a while. So yeah, definitely, I think that was a great example. Now, before we wrap up, we actually want to leave you guys with those 4 tips. And those 4 tips again were, number 1, to know yourself, know your gift. If you're selecting a college or career major, that's one of the key things, is to know what your passion is. What's the second one?
The second one was to consider the related careers.
Mm-hmm. And make sure that you look at not just that specific thing that you have your mind wrapped around, but some of the things that are maybe kind of related or connected to that industry as well. Of course, you would want to look at maybe the salary, or not maybe, you want to look at the salaries and the salary range for that particular industry or field. And then last but not least,
Yeah, the last one was to know what it takes to be successful in that field.
so definitely you want to know, you got to put in the time, put in the work to be the very best. You want to know what it takes and how you're going to get there. So that basically concludes our show. We thank you for watching. We hope you'll tune in next week as well. Again, this is my guest, Shay Hughes, and I'm Jamila Freelane, the host of the Encouraging Word Show. Take a look at us every Tuesday. We hope to see you there, and we hope that you'll leave some comments as well as some show topics that you'd like to know more about as it relates to college and career planning. You want to close out with a quote?
Yeah, so the quote that I have for today is, you've got to keep a good attitude. You can't think, oh, this is it. I've hit a hard time in my life, because that's when the door is going to open for you. And you got to be ready, and you have to be prepared.
And that was a quote by
From Andrew
Bassett, somebody we both admire. Thanks for tuning in.